Windbreaker, and welcome back to the Japanese Shabaru podcast. Starting off with Windbreaker, one of my favorites this season. We got episode 16 up first, and this is pretty much going over what happens after the big clash with Keel and Oferin. So we have Nagato and who just wanted to be like Ansai, who is his friend, who went to try to help him but failed, which have ended up having Buffrin just go in there to help him out, get it all sorted out. But we get his whole backstory and everything with how he did it, and how he basically ended up in Kill, and how he was trying to be like Ansai, trying to save some some kid that was being bullied, but ended up having to be saved by the leader of Kill at the time. And this is where we find out that Kill essentially lures their new members in by kind of like false advertising that they can be heroes, but in reality they just want people that are innocent and are not strong, so that they can break them mentally in there and basically trap them to be in the group. And this is how they got poor Nagato, and that's why he kept trying and trying to get out by, but couldn't really do it because he was too far in there with. First of all, he owed a lot of money, so they kept beating him up when he didn't provide enough, and kept demanding more for next time, and it kept piling and piling and piling until he just snapped and decided to resort to stealing. And that's where Ansai kind of like chimes in on him and lets Nagato know that, like, listen to me and their friend, that's a girl, I forgot her name. You've always been really strong and really cool. And they go back to a prior memory where he ended up uh, scraping his leg because he jumped from a tall place, and it was like necessarily he didn't have to do it, but because he wanted to follow Ansai and them, he ended up doing it. And he was just like, instead of being worried about his own leg, he was just like, I'm just glad that none of you all are hurt. And as people are heading back with Nagato, Ansai, and the group, Nirei finally wakes up, the boy that got completely destroyed in the at the beginning of this season. Now he's there, and Sakura is kind of like lagging behind with everybody just walking forward. And we get like a really nice insight with Sakura and how he was handling this whole situation, where like he was really dreading the fact that he feels like he failed them. Like, he talked a big game at how he was going to handle the entire Kill group, and ended up having to be helped by his upperclassmates. And he really could not do anything but blame himself for everybody getting hurt, and it frustrated him. And this kind of like where he and other people are kind of like surrounding him, like letting him know, hey, listen, you are not alone. We're kind of like, we understand what you're feeling. And they just really try to make it so Sakura felt like he wasn't the one that held all the responsibility for everybody getting hurt. They made sure that he realized that it was their choice to help out, and that he shouldn't feel bad for them getting hurt. And even Kaiji was kind of like nodding and also like talking about how like the Kill leader isn't really necessarily strong, so he doesn't know why the Kill group necessarily went with them or went along with his plans, because Kaji just really just went in there and like beat him in less than 10 punches. And this is when they like gather around Yume and they have like another big feast. And Yume's just there making sure everybody's is fed, having a nice laugh, having a nice talk with everybody while everybody's eating. And the one person that really didn't understand what was going on was Nagato, because even Nagato felt some sort of responsibility for what happened. And Ume, instead of like criticizing him and letting him know and kind of blaming him for Bofrin having to get involved, he just said like, you know what, just have a piece of the food and then we can talk afterwards. And that's when Nagato kind of like breaks down a bit. He's like, the food tastes good, and Ume just kind of like, just pretty much says like, yeah, food tastes better when you're with people you care about. And it's like, and that makes it all worth it for like them having to go through it, as they're getting to share this meal where it's just like bonding, just like family, just letting everybody in that room know that no matter what, like, they will be together. And he and Sakura have a little talk, and Sakura tries to explain that he didn't do so well because when he saw his friends getting hurt or his classmates, he couldn't really move like he wanted to, like almost like his muscles stopped working, like his slim stopped moving. And he for Sakura, who's always had to be alone, he doesn't really understand that when somebody you care about gets hurt, you panic, you enter this other state, and to him it's like brand new grounds where he never had to worry about anybody. So now the fact that he has people under him and people that look up to him, people that acknowledge his strength, having them get hurt has made Sakura more, you could say more vulnerable, but like it's making him like slowly realize that there are people he cares about, that he wants to protect, that he doesn't want to see get hurt. And I think that's like such a great character growth for him, where before it was all about him, and now he's starting to get this sort of like awareness that there's more. It's gonna be more about him with other people than just him. Especially, this just goes back to like the beginning of season 1 with how Sakura, in order for Sakura to really reach the top, he has to have people around him that care about his goals, that care about him, and that are willing to support him as he strives to reach the top. And we just get like a nice final reunion with the three friends, Ansai, Nagato, and the girl. And we get like a nice, this is really like the moment, or like the first step where Umemiya and Hiragi kind of realized, yeah, if Sakura is already feeling this sort of like responsibility to the people around him, he's gonna get real strong, so this was like his first test and his first real, like, or like, I guess his second step after the clash from season 1. This is the second step towards Sakura really gaining a good foothold at being strong. And the episode ends off with the real ringleader showing up at the end, and this guy just pretty much pretended to be one of the rookies, or like the bad fighters in there. He's just like, oh well, these I'm so done playing with them. And you could see like some of his tats, and had like a nice reference to Bofrin. So there's something going on with this guy, which I cannot say, but just know this guy will become relevant towards the end of season 2. And yeah, this episode 16 was amazing. I'm I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. I loved every bit of it, even though there's no real fighting. It was just much more character growth for Sakura, more layers towards other characters, and really fleshing out roles and setting up stuff for the future of the series with Sakura and his connection to everybody in Bufferin. And that'll be it on episode 16. Windbreaker, episode 17. So we're finally getting more more on what's to come next for the boys. And in episode 17, we have Ansai, who is now back in the class, and everybody's there just having a nice time. They're just relaxing. We get to see everybody see how they're behaving after their big brawl in school, and we come to realize that Sakura is not present at the school. So they call him, and they end up finding out that this Sakura got hit with a cold. So Nirei and Suo kind of like go to see where Sakura is, and they visit his home, and they come to realize that Sakura's not in a very good financial situation. Like, his house is old and looks kind of haunted, and looks very run down. So they're kind of wondering, this is where Sakura lives, huh? And when they arrive, they kind of expected to see like Sakura be with a family of sorts, but when they arrived and went inside, they saw that he was pretty much living on his own, and with very minimal stuff around. Like, there's no furniture, there's no TV, it's literally just Sakura, hit the essential like microwave, stove, balcony, and like a mattress where he can sleep. And as they're like kind of trying to help Sakura, Sakura just refuses their help for the most part, like he usually would, given how he is. But Suo and Nirei kind of like live the stuff that everybody got for him, and Suo kind of convinces Nirei like, we should probably go. Just leave the stuff here and see to it that he knows that we care about him, that he knows that we won't just leave him be. That we're here to help if he needs it. But they didn't want to impose the help. They wanted Sakura to kind of like come to a realization or ask them for help, because as the Suo kind of pointed out, like, Sakura has pretty much been having to fend for himself. So like he's also like in a place where he doesn't know anybody, and not only that, it seems like he's just getting used to having a cell phone. So he makes this great point with how would Nirei like realize where he's at, like what would he do to check where he's at, or if he wanted to find out where to go next. And Nirei's like, well, I'll just use my cell phone for that. And Sue was like, exactly. Sakura's the type of person that probably just got a cell phone and doesn't really know how to use it, or probably never had the opportunity to get used to using a cell phone. He's always had to do everything on his own. So giving him, just because you give him a cell phone to do the minimal stuff, doesn't mean he's gonna be able to do it right away. You have to ease him into using it. And I just love that even with all this, they kind of really always have high expectations, not high expectations, but high hopes of Sakura, because they see how he's always been on his own, and that has led him to be strong. And it's basically made him not be a follower. It's more so that Sakura has, because he's been all alone and he's always had to carve a road on his own. They're seeing his road and trying to like help guide him towards his own road. And that's when they meet the girl at the coffee shop, and she she kind of goes in there to help Sakura and gives him like a different perspective of things, because Sakura's like, I can do everything on my own, and because she had a nice soup made for him, she kind of like used the soup to make him realize that, yes, well, you can do everything on your own. Not You can't do everything all at once. So when you're sick, you won't be able to make the soup. Well, you can fight, and I can't fight. You can fight. You are the one that will be able to fight, and I'll be the one that provides the other support that you need. And in that, so you have to allow others to help you. It'll Not only will it lessen the burden you put on yourself, but it'll also show them that you are seeing them for who they are, and you value what they can do to help you. And that's like a also a foreign concept to Sakura, who's, because he's always been alone, he doesn't know how to accept help. He doesn't really know how to allow others to help him. And that's where he's gonna have to come towards next, right? It's his next step to evolving as a person. And because he's like that, and he doesn't know how others do it, he comes to the after he gets well and he's able to go to school, he goes to the only other person that resembles him the most, which is Kaiji. And Kaiji pretty much takes Sakura and gives him such great advice as his upperclassman or senpai. He tells him he gets him a coffee treat and tells him about it. Well, here's a coffee treat, and even though, let's say I remove the label, and now I say it's a tea, is it going to change the content? And it's like, no, it isn't. It's like, exactly. So in that sense, if consider the tea kind of like the help you're getting. Just because you're getting the help doesn't necessarily mean that what you're doing is not gonna it's not gonna be what, because you're getting help, it doesn't change the fact that you're still getting the job done, essentially. And Sakura's kind of like really letting Kaji know, yeah, but like, if I allow others to help me, then that just means I'm weak. And that means that I have to accept the fact that I'm weak. And Kaji just gives him to himself, like, listen, you're not really afraid of that. You're afraid of being rejected. It's like, you feel like you have a lot to live up to, and in doing so and being vulnerable, you feel like they'll reject you for who you are. But he's like, but that's not the way you should go about things. The way you should go about things is actually being able to look at them, because no matter what, they're looking at you, and they're not worried about what you can do or what you're not good at. They know what you can do, and they accept you for who you are. And that's what you have to do for them as well. You have to look at them directly and accept their help, accept that you're not going to be able to do things on your own. Don't be afraid to get rejected. There's not, and that's how that's how Sakura really understood that, okay, yeah, I kind of get it. And pretty much Kaiji just makes a joke like, yeah, we've always known this is how you are, you know? And it's like, we can just tell how what you were thinking, what you were feeling, just by looking at you. And then Umemiya and Hiragi kind of like come out of nowhere to break up this nice little bond between Sakura and Kaji. And it was so interesting because now Sakura can go and have faith in everybody, realize his mistakes, but also like Kaji gets to be a upperclassman and really showcase that once Umemiya and Hiragi leave, there's still gonna be somebody that is dedicated to helping the underclassmen like they are. And it's really interesting because we also get the confirmation that Kaji has had this talk before, where he was in Sakura's shoes, and the one that was feeling what Kaji did for Sakura was Hiragi. So it was a nice full circle moment for Kaji as well, and it made me really appreciate the character interactions and really made me appreciate how much Sakura will evolve if Kaji's anything to resemble his growth. And I'm giving this episode like a nice 9 out of 10. Another episode where there was no action, but still a lot more character moments, a lot more peeling of layers for characters like Sakura, for Kaji, and just an overall just getting a feel and understanding for the characters, their behaviors, and really getting in their mindset for this episode. And just overall, I love Windbreaker. One of my favorites this season. Highly recommended. That'll be it on episode 17. Yaiba Samurai Legend, episode 3. So this episode just kicks off where episode 2 left off, with Onimaru with this newly acquired weapon, just looking very Oni-esque, very much like a demon, and basically just he just unleashes a lot of power from his sword, like the wind, and then we get to see some of Yaiba's training put into fruition, where his training with his Kekai has greatly improved, where now he's able to detect movement within a certain radius, even without being able to look at his surroundings, just from the pure presence alone. And we get to see Yaiba go with Sayuki, I believe, and him being in school was very interesting because, like, apparently, like, the girls love him in school, and it's almost like he was replacing Onimaru. And then, of course, Onimaru pulls up and it's like, yo, let's fight. And of course, Jaiba's not gonna be the one to back down from a fight, as we know that's like his whole thing, where he just asks for fight from people. And he tries, and Onimaru just kind of like overpowers him per se. Jaiba really just had no way of dealing with the powers of the wind that the sword produced, and severely underestimating Onimaru this time around, probably because he beat him in the previous duel. But it was so interesting seeing how in this one Yaiba was the one that was playing Onimaru's role, where Yaiba was trying to fight by the rules, fight fairly, and now Onimaru was the one that was fighting dirty, to win by any means necessary, which was what Yaiba did in their previous encounter. And no matter what Yaiba did, even grabbing like metal pipes to fight Onimaru, and for the most part it seemed like he was gonna be pretty equal until like really Onimaru unleashed the actual power of his wind blade. And with the animation for this fight was like so incredible. Like, I cannot stress enough how much the anime is like really hyping up and really adapting well this anime. The power of the Fujinkan just like slices the school in half, just complete destruction, and Jabba really is forced to retreat from the fight. And of course he's gonna be dwelling the fact that he lost, and now he's like so concerned about being weak, and he wants to get stronger, but to do so he realizes he needs to harness a similar power, or get a sword that can give him enough power to match Onimaru. And of course, as that happens to be around and lets him know about the Raijinken, which is the other sword that's supposed to be fated to clash with the Fujinken. So Jabba pretty much goes and it's like, okay, well, I need to get the sword in order to take on Onimaru again. And and we learned a little bit about the Fujinken and the Raijinken and how like they they can overtake the person that or the wielder of the will of the person that's wielding them, and if overtaken they truly become Oni themselves. And that's probably what's happened to Onimaru, where he it may seem like he has full control of the sword, but in actuality the sword is probably using him, and that's why he gained those horns like an Oni. And so Jabba goes to get the Raijinken, and he meets one of the famous sword wielders, Musashi, who just happens to be the person that's protecting and defending the Raijinken sword. He's and pretty much once they realize where the sword is, Jabba pulls it out and tries to use it, and he gets overtaken by the will of the Thunder God. And pretty much Musashi has to be the one that like knocks him out so that he doesn't completely wreck his house and everything. And that's how pretty much how like the episode ends with Musashi agreeing to train Jaiba, and in doing so it would essentially make him worthy of the sword and make him kind of in his image. So Jabba's actually getting a proper master this time. It's not just gonna be him training in the wilderness to harness his instinct. Now it's actually gonna be like proper training, proper teaching. So for this episode, I'm giving Jabba a 10 out of 10. I really enjoyed this episode because it brought out a lot of interesting parallels with Jaiba and Onimaru, where Onimaru essentially he's somewhat in control, but also got overtaken partially by the Fujinken, my bad, and Jabba just completely lost all his sense to the Raijinken. So, and whereas Onimaru stayed in demon form, I do believe once Jabba can completely wield the Raijinken properly, he will remain human, and it'll just be like an interesting clash between evil and good, like usual. And of course, I already mentioned the whole like Onimaru's now dirty, Jabba's trying to fight properly, and this is all going to culminate with them essentially getting stronger and stronger until like they eventually clash again. And this time it's going to be a tiebreaker, so I'm looking forward to that. Now, so on episode 3. Jaiba, episode 4. So, continuing on, Onimaru is up to no good, per se. We see he starts the episode doing this ritual where he's trying to awaken some of the demon army within his place. And not only does he awaken like 8 generals, he also makes them go after the Raijinken because he wants to be the wielder of both swords so that nobody can stand in his way. And he also says that they can take along some like random smaller demons, or I guess I'll just call them foot soldiers, why not? And as that's happening, we get to cut to Jaiba, who's starting his training, and he's really struggling with one of the concepts of being able to manage his own weight. so that he can walk on the leaves that are in water, kind of like when frogs leap between those leaves. Yaiba essentially has to be able to do that. That's like the first step in order for him to be able to conquer the thunder god. And while his training is going on, we get to see what Onimaru is up to, where he runs up to the Japanese parliament where like all the lawmakers are or whatnot, and pretty much Onimaru is like goes in there and it's like brute force, like, listen, now you all listen to me. So not only does Onimaru have like a power hunger for actual strength, he's also getting like a power hunger for authority. Meanwhile, Yaiba's just trying to get stronger through this training, and we get to see him continue his training and continue to fail. And we have Sayaka, who happens to be the one that's making the food. Notice two strangers appear, which off of that already is like, okay, well, in the beginning of the episode we know that there's certain 8 people that are going after the sword, so they definitely are. Those two are probably definitely with Onimaru. But of course Sayaka doesn't know, so she invites them in, and there's a lot of like hints there where like they're not really human, where like one of them is constantly saying ribbit at the end of sentences, and one of the girl one pretty much says that the animals that were with Sayaka look tasty, and then she's like, oh, I really meant the food. And then we have the two ogres finally reveal themselves after Yaiba comes in with the sword, which now the sword has a sheath, and pretty much in Yaiba's training he's not allowed to unsheath the sword because he's not ready to wield the power that the Raijinken possesses. And then we learn of their names, and they're like really silly names, so Yaiba and the rest of the group just laugh at them. But they ended up being like quite decently strong, to the point where Yaiba kind of had to, or he realized he wasn't going to be able to beat him, so he tries to rely on the power of the sword. So he unsheaths it without being ready, and he just loses complete control. And basically what ended up happening afterwards is Musashi and the frog-like ogre had to do a truce, where now they were going to be working together in order to stop Yaiba from actually tearing apart the entire forest. And they end up, Yaiba really ends up overpowering them for the most part, and it wasn't really until they removed the orb that was in the middle of his sword where they were like, okay, well, now we're Yaiba essentially, that's the part that was giving him all the strength, so removing that just made Yaiba turn back to normal. And then they kind of take Sayaka captive as a hostage and try to get Yaiba to hand over the sword. But Yaiba refuses, and one of the frog ogre has some change of heart, where like he doesn't feel like helping Onimaru anymore because Musashi protected him from Yaiba during their fight. And now Yaiba's like facing off against the serpent-like ogre, and the serpent-like ogre is kind of like handling him really well, to the point where Yaiba just like playing with the sword cannot really take him. And he ended up having to come up with a different strategy on how to get more power for his blows, where he started using the hole that was left in the sword to spin the blade to get even more power with it. But as doing so, they were pretty much leaving Yaiba on his own, as they were going to take back the orb. And Yaiba ends up being able to finally complete his training, where he hops through the leaves in the lake in order to slice the the snake ogre in half, and it just basically, uh, instead of like completely dying, the snake just reverts back to its original form, which was like just a regular snake. So with this, we get two out of the eight ogres completely taken care of, as the frog ogre just kind of now is with the group, and is going to be helping them along their journeys, and yeah, just adding more family, more friends to Jaiba's crew is always good, especially someone who's decently strong already, and now they're resting in order to. They're essentially gonna go to a guy that has similar strength to the sword, or knows of the sword's existence and how to wield it properly. So that's like their next step for Jaiba's training. This episode was great. I'm giving this a 9 out of 10. My other thoughts on it is just I'm really loving how there's slow progression with Yaiba and his training, and just because they're doing the training bit, they're not ignoring the rest of the story, with where Onimaru is also getting some limelight, where we see how instead of just taking the same approach that Yaiba is and continue his training, he's more so like consumed, or basically just happy with the current power he has now, where he's not really looking to, or we don't see him practice or train anymore to get stronger. Now he's more so waiting for Jaiba to catch up to him, and I think that's going to be what leads to his downfall, because it seems like he's taking it easy and just trying to force his way into more authority and into more power, trying to take the easy route to getting that. Jabba's doing the fundamentals, where he's training his presence, he's training how to control his weight properly, and it's just in the end it's gonna really showcase that Jabba took the good route, and Onimaru is just slacking, and it's gonna be his downfall in the end. So I'm really looking forward to more Jaiba. That'll be it. So Fire Force episode 3. So we get episode 3 just gives us a nice recap at the beginning, just seeing how we got there from the previous episode, and we have this episode just really kicks off with Burns meeting Shinra and Joker, and we get a better understanding as to why Burns is actually siding with the Evangelists and with the White Clad, to where like pretty much because Burns is a man of faith, once he saw the Evangelist, he kind of realized that there was the only way that he needed a God to believe in, as we know, and because the Evangelists kind of seemed like this higher entity, it pretty much just he rearranged it to where like his belief was whatever the belief of the Evangelists is, as he kind of deemed them the actual God of the world, and is now gonna follow wherever he goes, essentially. And there's this whole thing where like Burns, even Shinra and Joker, or like Shinra tries to talk to him about how like this could like lead to like the complete destruction of the world and all that, and Burns just kind of, it's like, yes, it will lead to destruction, but we shouldn't be afraid of destruction, because after destruction there's always a rebuild, or like a regeneration period where everything just comes back, which in turn, yes, there is probably going to be a period where eventually everything's going to get rebuilt and be made anew. So even if it was leading towards the destruction path, there is not going to be like the end. And then we have Shinra and Joker pretty much trying to tag team Burns, which the fight the fight has been between those has been really good. It just really showcased Burns just being like this dominant force where like he's hitting stage 1, hitting stage 2, and then if he hits stage 3 it's probably going to be impossible to like just actually like take him on. And even though he was going to stage 1, Shinra couldn't really deal with him. Even Joker couldn't deal with him in stage 1, and then he goes to stage 2 and it's like I don't know if we're actually going to even be able to handle him now, as he just keeps getting so much more harder and harder as time progresses to just actually get rid of him or put him down enough. So Obi's rescue is not looking very good right now. But even so, like this whole shift in mentality that Burns has, it's even being questioned by some of his subordinates. And they really can't believe that he agrees with everything the Ambiguous is saying or with the White Clad. And I'm starting to waver towards that point. I feel like Burns is too smart. Maybe he is just playing along and he believes certain parts, but he's not completely with them. I feel like Burns will turn on the Ambiguous and the White Clad at some point. He just has to make it really convincing, especially because the girl that can read minds or like use her powers to read thoughts. So he has to be very careful not to think about a lot and just be able to focus on what's at hand. So really enjoy this mini scrap that we get this episode between them, and then we have the other people of Company 8 showing up and trying to rescue their leader, but as they're going they didn't realize that one of their key members fell, which is Arthur. He kind of stood up and then a bump just like took him out of the vehicle, and now he's nowhere when they arrive. So instead of the plan was essentially to get Arthur to be the lead up front, but because he's not there, they had to rely on Tamaki, which Tamaki's great, but like the people that the Ambiguous or Whiteclads send were like known as the Destroyers, which really cool name and really insane ability where they essentially have a power or technology that completely nullifies the other pyrokinetics from people. So it's the lieutenant was trying to use his bullet ricochets and it just did not work. Maki's own powers did not work. Tamaki's powers did not really work on them. And then aside from this, we have more stuff in the background where Hibana's still doing research on like everything that happened in the previous seasons and trying to really gather like how things get started, and it pretty much is whenever Hina was researching a lot of the stuff that has happened, everything just kept showing back to her orphanage where her and Iris started, and it just seems more convincing that the Evangelists have been using some of the churches to like really put their ploy forward, and it seems that Hibana's fires at her and Iris's upbringing was really caused by them, and it wasn't natural. It definitely seemed very man-made, very on purpose. Maybe it was even done so to the point to get her in line to be where she is now. So it's seeming very calculated. But no, yeah, I'm loving Fire Force right now. Probably one of the better shows. This episode's like a 9 out of 10. I'm looking forward to seeing Shinra and Joker really get their fight and seeing how they handle Burns. I'm still thinking Burns is kind of gonna play double agent, so, and I'm hoping he's playing double agent because he seems kind of busted and I don't think anybody could, aside from probably Benimaru, can handle him past stage 2. So, uh, yeah, I think that's it on Fire Force. Fire Force episode 4. So we're kicking off the episode with Tamaki essentially going on the offensive against the destroyer, and she seems to be handling Tamaki pretty well. And Tamaki just kind of like gaining gaining a lot of how do you say, like, Tamaki is gaining a lot of confidence, a lot more showcasing of her power now, and really just trying to buy time because Lich, who is the brains of the operation, who is the scientist, is trying to figure out how this destroyer's being able to use magnetism, even though she has like a firepower. So that's one of the things I'm really loving about Fire Force, is that they use fire and heat as in such a creative way that not everybody's power is the same, and everybody has their own unique way of fighting. And while Lich is deciphering how her power works, she advises them not to use any metal like the Tekio or any of that sort, because giving her any more metal is just going to make it much more harder for them to defeat her later on. And we learned that the way her power works is because of her gauntlet that's made of pure gold. There's certain cases where if you heat up gold, it creates sort of like its own magnetic field, and that's what's given her the ability to control metal, because of that magnetic field that it's creating through the gauntlet. Which then gets into like the only like really downside of this episode for me, where Tamaki once again is being used as a fan service person when they essentially use her firepower, where they drop a bunch of like metal in there and they have her heat up those metals quickly, and they use this device that Vulcan invented thanks to Tamaki, who wanted to have the ability to temporarily increase her own firepower so that she can be more useful and be able to match up Arthur and Shinra, whose firepower is completely high, completely outclasses her and is of much higher caliber than hers. And it really that whole thing where like they use that same device to make Tamaki's fire be hot enough to burn and melt down all this metal to the point where it just turned into iron. And because it turned to its iron, the magnetic field was not going to work on it, and that allowed Tamaki to use that and make her magnetic powers not work anymore. And of course, the lieutenant was dealt the final blow, where he actually shot them in the head and ended them. But then came the next destroyer, who was using the hot air pressures around it to create like tornadoes and be all these air currents that could cut them. And it seemed like that was gonna be really it for the crew. But then, luckily for them, the night finally arrived, and Arthur came in and pretty much made a really quick work of that guy. Took him out in one swing, and that was it for those two. There's only one more destroyer, which is good. We have yet to see what that other destroyer can do, but he seems to be one of the more powerful ones that didn't want to get involved. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. There's this other bit in this fight prior to Arthur arriving where, because their belts for their pants had metal, uh, all of them had to take it down and or take their belts away, and it just brought back where like the whole calendar shit that they did came back into relevance and actually was made like as kind of like a plot point where, like, because they were able to do this calendar, they weren't really embarrassed to be pantless. And then we got Shinra and Burns on still clashing up on top. Shinra's trying to talk some sense into Burns, trying to tell him like, you were a fire soldier, like you should be helping the people. And Burns is like, yes, I may be a fire soldier, but like my faith has always come first. And now he made the order to implant the bug on Obi, and Obi does get the fire bug implanted in him, and the episode ends with Obi starting to turn into an infernal. So really really great stuff from this episode. I'm rating it like a 9 out of 10. We are, first of all, we are getting to see everybody have a piece of the action, and now we actually have Arthur in the scene, who I know is gonna play a pivotal role in beating these destroyers. And they showcase one of the top destroyer. I'm assuming that Arthur's gonna have to face in this season, and I've been hearing great stuff about that fight, so I'm excited to see Arthur face off against him. And of course, we're getting the crushing blow that Obi's not going to be Obi anymore. He's going to be an Infernal. And given that all of what Obi has taught Shinra, and about how, even though they're essentially giving them rest, the people that the Infernals that they are taking out are essentially were people at first and are going to be there are people they were people at first and are going to be and essentially they are going to be put to rest, and they're essentially ending them themselves. They're not, it's just because you are putting them out doesn't necessarily deter from the fact that you are killing them. So that's going to be interesting to see whether Shinra is going to grow or be able to put Obi away, who he values very highly. Kind of like Shinra said at some points, like he is kind of like he does look up to Obi a lot, and he loves everything that Obi has taught him. And it's also especially hard for Shinra, who the person that turned Obi or gave the order for Obi to be turned into an Infernal was the person he once considered to be like a father to him. So a lot of great character development's going to happen for Shinra in the next episode, as well as probably one of the most heartbreaking things in this anime yet. So looking forward to that.